Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Power Platform Architecture Series. This is presented by PowerCat, the Power Platform Customer Advisory Team. And in this series, we're going to talk about patterns and practices as it pertains to Power Virtual Agent chatbots. Now, this is a series that we've inherited from the Power Apps PowerCat team itself. Last year, they went ahead and recorded a series that was quite popular on architectural patterns using the Power Platform. And this year, it's our turn to go ahead and build a similar architecture series based upon Power Virtual Agents. So my name's Kent Weare. I'm part of the PowerCat team. And with me today is Matt Farmer. Go ahead and introduce yourself,
Hi, I'm Matt Farmer, and I'm also part of the PowerCat team working with Power Virtual Agents. So this first session, we're going to, we actually have a series of sessions we're going to go through. They follow on one from the other, so hopefully you'll stick with us for the whole thing. This session is really kind of the primer to the whole session, talking about the things you need to think about before starting to build your first bot with Power Virtual Agents. So yes, so this series is really designed for architects, developers, IT pros. If you're in place to kind of work out how to build and deliver a Power Virtual Agent solution, this is a series for you. The content is there to give you a good understanding of all the different issues and design choices you might want to make as part of that solution. And we've divided the content up into 6 sessions that build on each other session after session, and there's a bunch of example materials. The link should be underneath this video that allow you to download your own solution, implement it on your environment, and follow along with us as we go through the sessions. So, quick architecture diagram of what we plan to go through over these 6 sessions, just to give you an idea that we are building this up from scratch into something that really is an enterprise level solution. So we're going to start in the next session actually with talking about kind of the real basics that are part of Power Virtual Agents. So you'll learn about things like topics, what they are and what we use them for, entities and how they become part of the topics that we deploy to customers, and then the other kind of base features like the analytics that come with Power Virtual Agents and the channels you can use to take your bot and deploy them to users. In the session after that, we're going to talk about some of the integration options that the Power Platform provides. So that's mainly around Power Automate, using that to connect to other services like SaaS services or backend APIs to build up integrations within your bot. Then we're going to talk about some of the more advanced integration options that we have, things like using Azure Bot Service and Bot Framework Composer to build integrations that are perhaps a little bit more complicated, a little bit more flexible if you want to really take your bot to the next level and build some of that advanced functionality. Then we're going to talk about some of the really advanced things you can do with PVA. So things like adding security or adding connections to omnichannel for customer service, or doing things like custom reporting, pulling that data out from Microsoft Dataverse and pushing it into Power BI. And then finally, we talk about all the environmental or the ways in which you manage your PVA bot when you want to turn it into a production service and manage it between environments and really turn it into something that is a solution that you're managing at an enterprise level.
Yeah, and I guess one way to think about all of this is that we're going to share all of our learnings that we've obtained as we work with enterprise customers implementing this whole stack. So you're going to find a lot of real world experience and helpful tips and tricks along the way.
Yes, we didn't just make this up. It's a really good point, Ken. This is something we've learned as we've been working with customers and are advising you on now. So let's get back to this first session. This is really giving you that background to help you know what you need to know before you get started, so you can start asking questions of your business stakeholders, IT teams, and things like that, so you can be successful in deploying your bot. So the first thing we'll go through very quickly is really why Power Virtual Agents. I hope, because you're in the session already, that you've already chosen Power Virtual Agents, but it's the sort of question you might get asked from others in the business. And really, this is our view on why you would want to do this. And the first question is really why bots? Bots are available now because of advances in artificial intelligence, natural language understanding that allow us to implement code that behaves like a human agent. And they're a great way of interacting from a customer point of view because there's nothing new to learn. You're just talking to them. And this has led lots of customers to look to deploy this for their customers as a new channel, but one that customers can already use without too much understanding to have on how the bot works. And we hope this is something that customers can deliver at a pretty rapid speed. And I think Power Virtual Agents is a great example of that. And often with a lower cost of implementation than other user interface choices that you might make. But there's a problem with that in that a lot of the frameworks and tooling that are around bots, because it is an advanced topic like artificial intelligence, can be quite hard to create and maintain. And more than any other kind of user interface, it's one where you really want to bring the subject matter experts, the people who really understand what customers are trying to do, together with the people who are building the technology. The other thing is, you can just provide a bot that does some simple work providing answers, but they're not really, really useful until you connect them into other things, other systems, and make them a fully fledged user interface. So that's really where Power Virtual Agents and the Power Platform comes in. A bit about the Power Platform, hopefully you're already familiar with this, but it's a set of tools that allow you to innovate with low-code platforms, with a whole interconnected set of tools that unlocks value everywhere. And obviously there's lots of videos you can go and look at if you want more details on the Power Platform as a whole, but obviously just calling out the Power Virtual Agents is part of that platform. And also it's built on other assets that Microsoft already has, Azure, the Azure Bot Framework, and Azure Cognitive Services. And when we look at some of the things you can do to extend out your bot, you're going to see how those having that fundamental underpinning for Power Virtual Agents is really, really important.
Okay, so when we think about why Power Virtual Agents, these are some of the things that you want to go ahead and consider. So number one is really around rapid bot creation without code. And the reason that we can do this is because we provide a maker experience where you can go ahead and essentially design your conversations in the form of a workflow that allows you to prompt for questions, display messages, and to be able to do that without writing a lot of code. And that's one of the reasons that allows Power Virtual Agents to be more approachable by a broader audience itself. Now, just because we do enable that, easy user experience for people to build bots based upon content, it doesn't mean that we're leaving out those developers or people that have a lot of technical skills either. I think Power Virtual Agents does something really well, and that's enabling, team development, or development as a team sport, as we like to say here. And really what it allows people to do is bring their strengths together in order to build a really compelling experience itself. So you might have a developer that's going and building a bot framework skill, or creating capabilities inside of bot framework composers, or even a custom connector to reach into your on-premise ERP system. But now we can go ahead and mash that up with the ability to provide subject matter experts with the ability to author topics and author conversations, because let's be honest, those are the folks that know the customers best. It's not necessarily the developer who's well-versed in the latest full stack development itself. Now, naturally, extensibility is a huge part of the platform itself. And so we have a spectrum that starts with like a no-code offering all the way up to a codeful offering. And using Power Automate to extend our capabilities of our chatbot, being able to transact with different systems is a key enabler. And certainly where there's need, you can also go ahead and write bot framework skills in your favorite programming language and plug that right into your chatbot experience. Now, this is pretty cool. So naturally, you want to be able to go ahead and build your chatbot, build out all of your topics, your conversations, model all of that. But you don't want to have to change that because you're going to go ahead and post on a specific channel. For example, it might be a mobile app, it might be in Teams, it might be on your external website. You don't want to have multiple versions of that same bot. So what we allow you to do is keep all of your conversations consistent and in one place, and then choose where you want to make your bot available by going ahead and publishing to those specific channels. And then lastly, what we want to enable is analytics. When we think about a chatbot project, it's not perhaps your traditional IT project where you have a beginning and an end. What you want to be able to do is to learn from your customers, understand what they're looking for, and then be able to quickly react to that in order to better service them. Because if they find value in your bot, they're going to come back and use your bot in more scenarios or more situations. And the more they use your bot, the higher the rate of deflection that allows you to gain more benefits from your chatbot and allow your people to focus on activities that are more meaningful or derive more value itself.
Cool. So if the why reasons resonate with you and you want to go ahead and start planning your bot, there's a few things we think are really important to think about that do change what you might focus on when going about building that bot. And those are the audience that you're going to be building it for, the sorts of interactivity that are going to be implemented in the bot, the development approach you're going to take, and non-functional requirements, those things that maybe aren't so obvious when you're defining exactly what the bot does, but are really important to make it successful. So let's just talk about audience first, because we see people implementing PVA in kind of three distinct buckets, and they do have a different approach in how you might go about actually implementing the bot. Some customers are looking to provide bots as kind of a tool used by their citizen developers, their staff within their organization, and maybe implement a bot for a department or a team. That's a very common scenario, and we have Dataverse for Teams. Again, we'll go into that more later, but as a technology that allows people to give the ability to make bots over to your departments and leave it for them to create. Secondly, we have internal bots, and these ones that are kind of organization-wide. They're not just in a particular team. So these are things like IT service or HR for a whole organization. And when you do this, it tends to be one that's very much a collaboration between those subject matter experts that we talked about, so someone in HR, someone in IT support, and the team actually developing the bot. And it needs to be kind of a 50-50 with creating the right content and deploying it the right way. But when you talk about a bot this large, then you are going to be worrying about things like application lifecycle, deployment and DevOps and things as well. And also some topics that tend to be very common with this scenario are things like single sign-on, so making sure people don't have to sign in to be able to work for the bot to know who they are, and connectivity to things like back-end ERP systems, software as a service for managing tickets and things like that. And they tend to be deployed in things like Microsoft Teams or intranet sites as well. The last one, external bots, tend to be the largest projects for deployment when thinking about bots. And that one tends to be, because of the scale, often more driven outside of IT, often driven by IT with SME input. So you will have somebody helping create the bot, but it's very much an IT development project. ALM, the visual design, things like that are all very important. And this is also one where you see the most of escalation to a live agent, being able to go from the bot to a real human and implementing that interchange between those two services, as well as things like connecting to back-end APIs. This one is also where we see the most complicated functionality generally input. So things like bot framework being used to extend and make that bot successful, and how this is deployed to company websites or apps, or also things like messaging solutions as well.
So I guess, Matt, with in your experience working with customers, I guess, what's been the most interesting bot that you've run into as part of your engagements?
Oh, that's actually quite a difficult one. I think the interest comes in different ways, right? So I think one of the really interesting ones is how quickly we can deliver. So I talked about external bots being perhaps one of the most challenging ones. So that still is something that you can deliver very quickly. And we'll talk about development approach in a minute, but being able to go from an idea to deploying on your public website in a few weeks' time is something that's absolutely within the realm of something you can do within Power Virtual Agents. For me, that's a very exciting scenario because you can deliver value really, really quickly and then iterate from there. I don't know. What about you, Ken?
So I think perhaps two. So I do totally agree with that velocity. I think that's really important. We had recently a city go ahead and deploy a bot on their external website to address property tax questions. And that was something that was provided over the course of a few weeks. And I thought that was pretty cool just to be able to address that velocity, because there was a specific date when the assessments were going to be mailed out to all of the citizens. And as a result, they were expecting a wave of requests and wanted to deflect those requests and let the chatbot address as much as that as possible. So that would be one. I guess the other one is an NFL team. We do have an NFL team that's built a bot, and it's out there to help service requests or questions about, say, tickets. And I know this was kind of a down year in terms of attendance at stadiums, but still that use case of being able to provide that, commonly requested or frequently requested things about, like, where do I park, how much is parking, things of that nature. But then being able to say, hey, I'm looking to buy tickets, and to be able to escalate into a conversation with a live agent and then allow them to have a dialogue with a real person is another really cool use case as well that I've run into.
Yeah, awesome. I think generally we tend to get involved in the internal and external bot projects because they tend to be pretty big. But it doesn't mean because they're a big project you can't deliver value quickly and do pretty awesome things in a short period of time.
Yeah, and I guess on the departmental side, we've seen some organizations deal with return to work scenarios by using a chatbot. And it's something that they can also do quite rapidly, ask or prompt for information about, like, maybe symptoms and, exposures, things of that nature, and then be able to store that data in a backend data source like Microsoft Dataverse or even SharePoint, and then be able to provide some reporting on top of it. So, a quite powerful use case that you can do very quickly that historically probably would have taken a lot of time and a lot of money to go ahead and build. But that's not so much the case anymore with low-code chatbots.
Yeah, absolutely. Quick talk about the kinds of interactivity. I mean, we've already mentioned some of them. We will talk in session 3 about kind of using Power Automate in a way that can make calling back-end services really easy. There are other ways to do that as well, which we'll also cover, but that's a very common scenario, right? We mentioned earlier about the bots are really useful when they connect to other things and you implement processes. I mean, this is how that happens. I think part of your job as an architect when you're starting this process is work out what things you could connect to or need to connect to, and then work out how that interactivity is going to work. The other thing is very complicated conversation flow. So if the conversation flows you're talking about require some amount of generation, then it may be that you need to use something like Bot Framework Composer to put together those conversations so they're more variable for your customers. Again, working out if that is an essential thing or whether that is something that is a nice to have or a stage 2 thing is perhaps part of the things you need to think about now when you're getting your bot ready, because again, speed sometimes is the most important thing, so you can see how your customers react to the bot. And then the last one, we already talked about escalate to an agent scenarios. That one is definitely something that needs planning. So Power Virtual Agents has good connectivity to Dynamics Omnichannel, which is Microsoft's solution for agent interactivity, and can also set up interactivity to a whole host of others on the market. But if that is part of the bot that you're planning, don't underestimate the work involved with that, because you do have to set up that agent service if it's not already there, and make sure that you can connect to it in the right way. So that's definitely an important thing to log.
And if you've never seen it before, it almost feels like magic, right? Where
Yeah.
you're having this conversation with basically a chatbot, right? And it's you're going to automatically respond, and then you say escalate, and basically all of a sudden you'll start typing with a live agent, and you'll see a little message saying a live agent is now typing with or is now conversing with you. And it does feel like magic, but Matt is right. It does take some planning, and it's not just the technical planning; it's also the change management side of things as well. Like for some people, they may be new to this as part of a customer support agent. They might be used to using the phone, no problem, but now in terms of going ahead and being able to type and to concurrently manage requests, which is part of the core platform, does take some training and to forethought in order to make sure you've got a good experience for both your agents and also your customers.
Yeah. Not wanting to put anybody off, just make sure you're factoring it in when you're planning your bot. And let's not forget the non-functional requirements. Again, anybody who's done system development, system architecture will be very familiar with these kind of things, but just calling them out that they are things that you will want to factor in. And a lot of customers, once they get started, these things aren't important straight away, but they become important very quickly. So it's worth doing some asking around to see what people need. Design and styling. There are ways in which we can absolutely make our PVA bot meet kind of corporate styling requirements, whether that be on your external website or intranet and things like that. Depending on how extravagant those requirements are, may take more or less work. Styling, CSS, things like that need to be implemented. So make sure, ask the question and see whether people are expecting it. Security, single sign-on, things like that. If you're doing an internal bot, who is your OAuth provider? If you're doing an external bot, and you want people to sign in with an external bot, how does that sign-in work? Again, if you're using things like OAuth, there are ways we can do that with PVA. If there's something else, then we perhaps do, you need to do a bit more thinking about what you're expecting the bot to do on behalf of people. Custom analytics. PVA comes with out-of-the-box analytics in the PVA tool, but those analytics are shipped down to your own Dataverse environment. So do you want to then take those analytics and push them somewhere else? Do you want to data warehouse them? Do you want to create dashboards off them? Again, may not be a requirement immediately, but that one's a very common thing that customers ask for as soon as they start seeing data coming out of their bot, really. And leading on to that one, if you are data warehousing, what data retention requirements do you have? Are there any kind of privacy issues with that data that you need to think about? It's all important to make sure that that meets your legal requirements and company standards. And then finally, application lifecycle. There's a good story with all across the Power Platform using what we call solutions, and we'll go through that in session 5. Talking more about how that works, but make sure you've thought about how you will manage PVA through environments, and particularly as you get out to things like external bots, where change control is very, very important. How are you going to do your lifecycle management? How are people going to make edits, and in which environment are they going to do that? Checks and balances as part of deployment that you need to put in place.
If we think about historically what goes into building a chatbot, it was typically some developers that understand a specific framework, and it's very technical in nature, and you're modeling out all of your conversations in code, and you might be connecting to a back-end AI service to understand utterances and to identify intents and then do this routing. And it is a proven method. There's no knocking it. However, when you think about how do we democratize bot building, and that's the core goal here, is we want to have more people building bots, more companies using bots, and reducing the time to market. Now, the way that you reduce time to market is you bring more people to the party. And by having a PVA-like experience, we can include multi-author support so that we can have multiple people that are contributing to a bot at any given time. And there's also different sort of areas that they can focus on. Subject matter experts can focus on content, and then you can have some of your technical folks that are more focused on the technical needs of the overall project itself. So that could be things like ALM, like your solutions, connectivity to external systems, connectivity to on-premise systems, dealing with custom canvases where you are going to write a little bit of JavaScript and focus on theming. Also implementing those security schemes that you just talked about on the previous slide itself. And so this really creates that opportunity to scale because you can have multiple people focusing on different areas of the overall project, and people can operate within their sweet spot. Subject matter experts know content. They know how customers want to be communicated with and are going to be aware of what is the needs of those specific citizens or users. And then naturally, the people that love being involved in tech can focus on that. And the ultimate outcome here is that you've got basically a teamed delivered solution. And the idea is that you can do that in a shorter amount of time because you've lowered that barrier of entry to go ahead and to build it.
I really like this one when we get on a call with a customer, and particularly if it's a regular call and it is someone from the business, the SME and IT working together. And particularly when we talk about an idea and then are able to go and implement it in that week between calls. It's that the speed is just different to perhaps traditional IT, which would be we just talk to IT, who then go off and talk to the business, who then come back. It's a different approach.
Well, yeah, and you're like filling out templates and documents and spreadsheets about all of the questions you're going to ask. Well, why do that twice? Like, why not just do that right in the tool? And then I think that's what we're able to do this. And yeah, I've seen customers, that city that I've talked about has used this approach, that football team has also used this approach as well. And that's what's really helped them scale. So I've seen it with my own eyes, and it does work. And it is probably the product in the Power Platform that lends itself most to this. Now, I might get in trouble for saying that, but that's my opinion, that I think PVA has done this very well.
Oh, there we go. Past and now. There we go. So should talk about the iterative approach. I mean, we've already mentioned this, and it's going to build this slide for us right here. But that we talked about, just said, having the business there with the IT and implementers and working those those people together as one team, and how the iterative approach that you can implement with PVA makes it really easy to get that feedback loop set up. You can make change quickly. You can react to effectively what your customers are telling you through the analytics that it provides. So the approach is pretty simple. I mean, you can get the bot set up very quickly and get started on building kind of a set of starter topics that you can then deploy to the channel you choose. We can add interaction with Power Automate, or if you want to, bot framework skills, but we're getting real-time feedback as part of that iteration through the analytics that PVA provides. So you don't have to envision the entire project, 6 months down the line. You can, as we've said, like some customers do, get something deployed within a few weeks and then see how customers respond to it. Even if you're just taking a few core use cases and providing those through the bot, you can quickly see if that makes customers happy, and then add more use cases, add more interactivity over time. And it feels like a very refreshing approach sometimes with certain customers, I think, for them to get involved in.
Yeah, like I know sometimes there's concerns with people using the term like MVP, like from the business perspective, because they feel like, oh, this is just a game where you deliver something and then you disappear. But it really becomes that opportunity of that continuous improvement. And you need to look at it going into the project like that, because if you think you're just going to deploy once and that you know everything about your customer, I hate to say it, but you're probably going to be wrong, right? So it is that growth mindset, the idea that we're going to learn and we're going to be able to use data to drive decision making, which is naturally hugely important these days. You want to make sure that you're investing your efforts where it provides the most value. And we're going to give you signals in the form of that dashboard that allow you to then focus on a specific topic or a specific area of your chatbot that customers either love or feel like it could be improved, and you'll get that feedback in the tool itself without writing any code to capture that analytics.
Just another slide on this, because it's something we deliver quite often within this team, which is hackathons, which PVA lends itself incredibly well to this approach of bringing those parties together, bringing together IT and SME expertise, and just seeing what's possible in a few days. We deliver this quite often to larger customers because it does start to generate ideas and see what's possible in technology and start to enforce this idea that we don't have to necessarily plan what, 6 months down the line, what we're going to deliver. We can instead take the technology and see what we could deliver very quickly.
See, now you're going to get me in trouble again. See, this, once again, PVA does really well in hackathons, like really well. We had an energy company this past summer, I guess it would have been summer 2020, and they joined us for our Microsoft hackathon, and they had built, 3 bots over the course of 3 days. And they were bots like from an IT perspective, an HR perspective, and then they had a field operations bot as well. And they had about 10 people. And it's one of those things where, they went through PVA in a day, they learned the basics, and then people could immediately contribute. And once again, PVA is a great tool to include in hackathons because there's something tangible at the end that you feel is close to being able to go live in production. And that ROI just is very difficult to come across in some other tools and platforms.
This makes it really real, right? As you go from, you're going to learn about this technology today, and in 2 days, you're going to have a thing that you've built that you could use. It's quite, people don't always believe it when you first tell them that.
And then the other thing that I'll say is like what was super interesting was on day 3 of this specific hackathon, I feel like that's where the creativity just like came out of these folks, right? Like the first couple of days they were focused more on like FAQ type bots and content, which is great. Like that's super important. But then what they were able to do was they were able to think about and leverage their existing Power Automate skills and say, well, what if we went ahead and connected to Azure DevOps? Or what if we went ahead and connected to Workday? Or what if we went ahead and connected to, in that case, it was called CDS, but Microsoft Dataverse, in order to like have more of this transactional data moving back and forth and saying, we're going to move beyond just FAQs, but how can we even get more value if we're going to transact on behalf of that user as well? And it was super awesome to see like them, like they're just the light bulbs go on and be like, hey, now we can connect this. And it's all because of this integrated platform that we do offer.
So finally, we always check with customers that they've considered this when they get started. You will have to license PVA when you decide to go live with it. So just being aware of exactly how we license PVA within Microsoft. It's all based around sessions. So normally the question we start asking people is how many sessions they expect to have in their particular use case. Session is, when somebody goes and uses the bot, and then there's a number of conditions that would either suggest that a user has finished or not. So it's either 60 minutes or 100 turns, or they finish the session by saying that we've answered their question. That in PVA terms, it's when the user actually triggers a user-based topic. We'll be going into the difference between user topics and system topics in the next session, so bear with us on that one. Another one to call out is Power Automate usage, because people don't always realize this, is that anything you connect to with the PVA trigger in Power Automate is included in your license cost. So you can do a lot of the integration off the back of PVA without incurring any additional costs. And then there's capacity included for Dataverse as well. But sorry, Ken, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, I was glad you brought that up, and I'm glad you included this, because sometimes people don't realize this, and they may feel like there's a little bit of sticker shock initially, but then they realize this and they're like, wow, that's actually really good value. And I think the other part of this is, in addition to the premium connectors, is you also have additional API entitlement. And so with Power Automate, there are some thresholds with APIs and how many you're able to call per day. And what you do is you get an elevated number of API calls as part of this license as well. And so it is value add from that perspective. And certainly those premium connectors are also a lot of value add as well when you think about connecting to databases that might exist, or we see like ServiceNow from a help desk scenario, or even SAP. You now can use those connectors as part of your chatbot experience as well.
Absolutely. So that's been our first session. So just to summarize what we've talked through, We detail some of the things you want to consider as an architect or IT decision maker who are planning on deploying Power Virtual Agents as part of a solution. Want to make sure you're really thinking about what audience your bot is likely to be for, the types of interactivity you're likely to implement with it, and some of those non-functional requirements that may become important to your use case as well. Think about how you can go about getting PVA used within your organization with things like hackathons or the iterative approach you would take to developing it, and then make sure you know what's covered in the PVA license. Great.
And have fun.
Yeah, and have fun. Yes, because it is fun to develop with PVA. It's a good fun tool to use. We will be going through how to use PVA, all the basics of using that tool in the next session. So please join us for that. But until then, thanks for joining us for this session.
Yeah, and don't forget to like and subscribe.
Oh, yes, absolutely do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.